Hello everyone. Welcome to another practice in our Expanding Your Palette series. And once again, I invite you to prepare yourself for this time. If it isn't still prepared from our last practice, take some time to prepare your space again now. Have music playing, burn incense or fragrant oils, light a candle or a few. Have some meaningful symbols and objects and flowers around you. And now prepare your body by getting comfortable. Slow and deepen your breathing and still yourself. Now prepare your heart by taking note of any strong emotions that may be demanding your attention. If you need to deal with them now, then do it and return to this practice when you're ready. Or alternatively, you can place these feelings into a literal or figurative container, or you can light a candle and allow it to hold your emotions for you until you are ready to receive them back. And finally, prepare your mind by noticing any strong thoughts that are demanding your attention. And again, you can place them in a literal or metaphorical container until you're ready to return to them at the end of the practice, or you can simply notice them and honor them in some way and then let them go. And then once you feel prepared, spend a few moments in silence. Take one more deep breath in, hold it for a heartbeat, and then release it. You may want to use the following questions to center yourself and get focused for the practice ahead. What old, familiar, or unchanged things do you value and appreciate in your life? What facets of yourself and your life feel secure and unchanging to you? What qualities and characteristics in your identity would you not want to change or lose? What old experiences, what ways of being or people or objects would you not want to lose in your life? And now, if it's helpful, you may want to share in this simple prayer. Today, I celebrate old things, ancient tombs and medieval cathedrals, pressed flowers and fine wine, vintage cars and antique furniture, classic art and classical wisdom, repeating cycles of seasons and days, long-standing friendships and treasured parts of my own soul. And I open my heart, mind and life again to every ancient, good, true and beautiful thing that has enriched my life. So may it be. One of the things I loved when I had a chance to visit the Netherlands a few years ago was visiting the ancient cathedrals in all the cities near where we were staying. I've always loved the sense of history and the combination of transcendence and rootedness that I feel in these wonderful old buildings. I can spend hours just looking around or sitting in silence. I love feeling, even just for a moment, that I'm part of this ancient flow of spirituality and humanity. I remember a number of years ago having a stopover in England after a trip to the USA for a conference with my wife. And we made sure that we had the whole day to explore as much of London as we could. We found a flight that got us into, I think it was Heathrow, as early in the morning as possible, and then we got back on the flight late that night so that we could spend a whole bunch of the day running around London. In the late afternoon, we finally got to Westminster Abbey. But just as we got to the gate, they closed it and they wouldn't allow anyone in. They said that it was time for the evensong service and tourists were not allowed when a service was running. The people in front of us in the queue asked if they could join the evensong service and they were allowed in. So of course, Debbie and I jumped at the chance and we asked to join in too. And so they allowed us in as well. And as we sat waiting for the service to begin, I read the bulletin that we'd been given. And I was amazed to discover that evensong had been celebrated on that site for I think it was 1100 years. And with that knowledge in mind, Going into the service became one of the most meaningful experiences of my life because I was so aware of all the people who had said these same words and sung these same hymns before me through centuries. In today's society, there's a temptation to be negative about the old. It can be very easy to see it as dry, outdated, irrelevant, and boring. We laugh at quaint beliefs that seem so superstitious now. And we find ancient customs and values so primitive and uncivilized. If we're honest, we often look back on the past with a significant measure of arrogance and condescension. And yet we easily forget that we are products of that history. And one day we will be the ancient people who are viewed with humor and perhaps even pity by future generations. And all of this should tell us that it's almost impossible to develop a deep, thoughtful, and self-aware life without engaging meaningfully with both our personal past and our human history. And so how do we do this? How do we engage meaningfully with our own past and humanity's history? Here are some thoughts, but again, please add yours as well. The first thing we can do to engage meaningfully with the past is to be intentional about seeing and embracing the value of ancient treasures. Now, I'm not talking about finding wealth in Tutankhamun's tomb. I'm talking about the intangible, the life-giving, the spiritual treasure that we find in things that are ancient. Alain de Botton, the founder of the School of Life, who happens to be an atheist, has a wonderful TED Talk called Atheism 2.0. It's based on his book entitled Religion for Atheists. And he suggests that when many developed societies decided to give up on God, they also threw out a number of things that faith communities, the churches, provide that are actually really valuable. And so he suggests that it's possible to recapture these things without taking on what I think he calls the baggage of God. So what are these ancient treasures that religion can offer, even to people of no faith? Well, here are his suggestions in brief, but I'd encourage you to watch his TED Talk if you can. Firstly, religion has been great at education, not just in terms of learning information, but in learning how to live. As Alain de Botton puts it, the difference between a lecture and a sermon is that a lecture seeks to give you information, while a sermon seeks to change your life. Secondly, religion gives us a calendar to order time, which in the case of Christianity does work a little better in the northern hemisphere than in the south. But nevertheless, that calendar helps us to see time not just as linear, but as cyclical, as going through these recurring, repeating seasons from year to year. And that can be very helpful to ground us and give us a sense of connectedness with the earth. Religion also sets up rituals around certain significant feelings and events, and that can help us to process them better. Religions teach via bodies, not just brains. They back up philosophical ideas with symbolic action, which helps us to learn in a whole person way, and what we learn then becomes more part of us more easily. Religions use art really well. They use it didactically in service of higher values. It's not just entertainment. There are others, but these are a few examples, and they illustrate the priceless value in ancient things that we ignore at our peril. The second thing we can do to engage meaningfully with the past is to sink our roots deep into ancient wisdom in whatever way fits us best. We can turn to scripture, science, classical literature, art, music, philosophy. It doesn't matter what we choose. They all have the power to connect us with our ancient human roots and to give our lives a greater sense of meaning. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings trilogy and Vivaldi's Four Seasons have both fulfilled this role for me at different times. And I encourage you to make intentional times to connect with classics in movies, books, music, or whatever speaks to you. Visit places where the old is preserved. Watch movies or theatre about historical times. Read historical fiction. Some art may be created now, but gives us a window into the ancient. And finally, connect meaningfully with people from older generations. Hear their stories. Learn how they see the world. We lose ancient wisdom, perspectives, and experiences at our peril. History is a great teacher, not just in helping us not to repeat its mistakes, but also in giving us forgotten ways of addressing problems. Problems that may feel new to us, but that actually resonate with issues and problems of the past. Our lives are enriched when we feel connected with where we come from. We gain a sense of identity, a sense of community, a sense of our place in the evolving universe's story. And so take a moment to sit with this meditation. Notice what stood out for you, what challenged or excited you, what made you curious or anxious. Make a note to come back to these insights through the next few days. And when you're ready, you may find it helpful to explore the following questions as you respond to today's practice. What ancient wisdom is speaking to you? What ancient buildings, works of art, music, or literature can you explore in the next while? Which ancient historical figures have fascinated you? How can you learn more about them and build a relationship with them across time and space? What can you do to be more intentional about embracing and navigating the ancient within you and around you? And now, in a moment of silent reflection, I invite you into another imaginative visualization. Think of a few historical figures that you find interesting, admirable, or wise. Imagine that you're in a room with them, sitting in a circle, talking. Picture the room as vividly as you can and fill it with as many details as possible. If you're able to recall details from pictures you've seen of these ancient ones, then imagine how they look. But if not, just give them imagined faces and make them as detailed and clear as you can. When you can feel yourself in the company of these elders, begin a conversation with them. Ask them questions and imagine how they would respond. Listen for any unexpected wisdom or creativity that they might share and make a note of it. And feel free to continue the conversation for as long as you want. And when you're finally ready to bring it to an end, thank them for their time and wisdom and leave your imagined room. And again, you can pause the video while you do this if you need to do that. And now, as you go into the rest of your week, I encourage you to make some time to intentionally embrace the ancient. Once again, think of some creative endeavor that you enjoy, but this time make it something that is an old favorite for you, something with which you are very familiar. And then through the week, make time to enjoy being creative in familiar ways. Honor and appreciate your favorite colors, words, sounds, scents, and tastes, depending on what you do creatively. And as you do this, reflect on your experience and what it can teach you about yourself, about life, and about the power of old treasures. So thank you for sharing this practice with me. And I'll see you in the next chapter of our Expanding Your Palette journey.